In this episode of the Campcast, I do an interview with Chaos Theory Lighting and Compositing Supervisor Eric T. Hawkins, so stick around until after the intro. Hello and welcome to the Cretaceous Campcast. I am Cretaceous Dave, and this is a podcast all about Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous and Jurassic World Chaos Theory. Well, we finally got the full trailer for the final season of Chaos Theory. Just a few days ago, New York Comic Con, there was a Chaos Theory panel. They showed the first episode to the attendees. No, I wasn't there. I had a ticket for it. I planned on being there, and then we last minute had a family vacation out to California. So unfortunately, I had to miss New York Comic Con. But from what I've been told, it was great. The first episode of season 4 is fantastic. I don't want to know anything about it. I just wanted quick, how was it sort of reactions from people. And so far, I'm hearing nothing but positive things about it. And the biggest thing of all from there is we got the full trailer. It was jam-packed full of good stuff. We saw the Giga in full glory. We saw the Theory. We saw the return of Dr. Wu. Lots of good stuff going on. This episode is not to break down the trailer, to talk about the trailer. If I have the time, I'll make something about the trailer. A lot of the other media outlets have already given their thoughts and breakdowns of the trailer and whatnot. So lots of content creators for you to check out if you're looking for more stuff about the trailer. I do hope to talk about the trailer when I get some time. But in this episode, I've got something much bigger and much cooler to talk about. And I had the opportunity earlier today to sit down and have a conversation with the lighting and compositing supervisor on Chaos Theory, Mr. Eric T. Hawkins. From the moment I saw season 1, I wanted to talk to people involved in the creation of this show because the show hit me in a special kind of way. And one thing that really, really stood out to me was how beautiful the show looked. And in particular in season 1, and this is a little bit of a spoiler for what's coming up in the interview, the episode in Sammy's house when the power went out and the Atrociraptor busting through the saloon doors, I thought, like, wow, that looks so good. The lighting is so good. So it was an honor and a privilege to be able to chat with Eric about his job, about working on Chaos Theory, and just going over some of the scenes I really love throughout the show. So I hope you guys really enjoy it. I had a great time chatting with him. He's such a fantastic individual, and hopefully we can catch up again soon. So here you go. Take a listen to what we have to say. Appreciate you taking the time out and that we were able to make this happen. Super excited. I kind of had this idea because one of the first things I noticed watching the first season of the show was, wow, the lighting is like so great in this show. Like Camp Cretaceous was good, but it's, most of the time it was daylight, it was bright, you're in the jungle, and Chaos Theory kind of takes it to a different level with just the visuals of the show. And we'll get into some of my favorite things in just a little bit to talk about. But yeah, one of the first things I noticed watching it was like the overall production of the show was awesome. And I really appreciate the people that, not everybody recognizes or thinks about when they watch an animated show. Everyone's just more thinking about, the voice actors and stuff like that. And, I want the folks behind the scenes that make these shows happen to know you're very much appreciated. And if I get the chance to talk to anybody, it's an honor for me. So thank you so much for taking the time out to do this. And before we get started with anything Chaos Theory related, before you got the Chaos Theory job, were you a fan of the Jurassic franchise?
Very much so. So I was, 93. I was 15 when Jurassic Park came out, and Steven Spielberg was huge. So yeah, Jurassic Park was amazing. We had never really seen CG animation at that level before, so seeing those kind of dinosaurs come to life like that. I'm still a sucker for stop motion, and a lot of the stuff that Tippett was doing, I think it was Tippett in the beginning, was like trying to get, do the stop motion for the dinosaurs. And then, that was really eye-opening. And being from where I was already always, loved art and images and drawing and photography when I was a kid. But being from the area I was from, like a lot of people you probably talked to, you didn't really see an avenue for a career or consider it, like as something that viable that you could do for the rest of your life. And so it was just, I always enjoyed movies and loved movie making and started making my own little movies and animations. But it wasn't until like kind of like after I'd become an adult in my mid 20s where I was like, I want to do something different. I'd met, different people in my life through travels, and this became, maybe an option. So I went to school, and then when I got there, Jurassic Park was always like an inspiration and something that kept me excited about the possibilities in animation. But yeah, I mean, it was always a big influence, and I was a big fan as a kid.
Cool. Yeah, I think a lot of people, even if they don't end up, working this, because very select few, get to work on it and have that honor. But I think it's been very influential for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, and it's a one of one movie. But I'm just glad, we got to build on it, have a lot more movies and these two awesome animated shows out of it and stuff. So you kind of touched on this, a little bit, but did you always want to get into this line of work? And, what kind of drove you to it? Was there a moment like you saw something, you were watching something or anything that was the like, light bulb going off that wanted to get you into what you do now?
Well, I wanted to be in animation, so I went to animation school in Florida, a school called Full Sail. And when you go to these schools, you take every departmental class. You take animation, modeling, surfacing, lighting, compositing, and it's kind of comes down to the simple thing is I was taking my lighting class, and my instructor pulled me aside after a project and was like, "I think you're pretty good at this." And I was like, "Oh, I'm pretty good at this." It was just that little nudge that kind of pushed me in that direction. And once someone gives you that encouragement and you dive a little deeper, the world kind of opens up. And that's where I really put all my focus into and started having fun. And as I became more proficient at it, it became more and more rewarding because I was finding an outlet for my creativity. And it was something that I was having success at. So, of course, that's always fun. And, then when I came out to, I got my first job at Nickelodeon, I just worked with a really great group of talented people that were really encouraging and supportive. And then, of course, seeing your work on the screen finally is something that's just like so incredible. And it's a big leap from making your own projects and you're in full creative control and, you're responsible for everything. And then you get with this group of people, like I said, all the support and encouragement. And all of a sudden I'm building upon other people's great work, kind of what you mentioned about Camp Cretaceous and the leap from Camp Cretaceous to Chaos Theory. The lighting and comp soup of Camp Cretaceous, Kathy Tran, she's amazing. And I got to like stand on her shoulders and build upon what she had set as the foundation. So it gave me quite a leg up. And then, of course, all the talented folks that helped design the look of the show.
Awesome. That's it's cool. I love to hear, especially that, you got into it because you love it and you kept doing it because you love and enjoy it. Because it's some people take their jobs as it's a job, but when you love what you do, you kind of you can tell in the finished product that the people that worked on this genuinely loved working on it. And I mentioned that to other people I talked to. Like you can tell you put so much work into the show. Like the show feels like it was made with love. So
It certainly was, and I'm glad it comes across that way. And I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine, and we were just talking about how hard this stuff could be sometimes, and it is a job. But in the end, we come away with a piece of art that is there forever, and we can look back and see it. Not a lot of jobs have that output, like where there's always something there that you made together. Um, and not only is it just like this thing you work so hard towards and achieved, but it's also kind of a bookmark of like uh, to look back and think about that team you worked with and all the people and the relationships. And so it's a good reminder of, why you put in all that hard work and, and me being at the end of the line, like the last person that works on the show almost, visually anyway. Um, I'm, if I drop the ball, like I'm letting everybody down, right? Like the writers, the designers, like the modelers, the shaders, like everybody. If it doesn't work out in the end, if it doesn't look good or look the way they wanted it to, it's kind of on. That's where a little bit of the pressure comes. Not that like it's that important in the overall picture of the world, but like in that small little group of people, like it's very important that the output looks great, and I think they are all happy with how it came out.
Yeah, I can't speak for everyone, but I think the show is absolutely beautiful. The way it
Thanks.
looks, everything from start to finish. Obviously, not the finish. Have to wait a little over a month to see that. But what we've seen so far. But for anybody that is unfamiliar, if you can briefly kind of describe or go over what does a lighting and compositing supervisor do on a show?
Well, it varies from show to show as far as like what they want out of that position. But for this show in particular, what they wanted was well, the lighting comp suit is in charge of placing the lights and doing the lighting direction for the episode. I think there's like 400 shots per episode for 22 minutes. And so you decide on where the lighting is going to be. You're kind of the cinematographer, hand in hand with the director, the storyboard director, and the art director. And you just want to decide what's important on the frame. What do we want the audience to look at? How do we guide them towards that? What's the mood? What are the colors? How can we make things stand out? So you want to create like integration, right? And you want to make the skins look good, and you want to highlight, what's important in the story. But I guess mostly you're making sure everything's integrated. Like the feet look like they're actually on the ground. The characters look like they're in the world. Where's the sun? What time of day is it? All those kind of decisions go into it. You work really closely with the show leadership and like the art director and the lighters, and you get everything. I guess in the end, everything comes together, and you want to help tell the story with the shaping of the faces. Um, and I'm really simplifying it, but that's kind of basically it. Like it's mostly, compositing is seamless integration. And then, lighting is so detrimental to story and to images. And I think that's also what excites me, about the role.
Okay, yeah, excellent. And I have a couple of scenes that kind of stood out to me. I picked one from each season, and as a bonus, I got something from the season 4 trailer. But we don't have to
Okay.
talk about season 4 because I don't want you to say anything you shouldn't be saying or anything like that.
I will not.
But for me, a lot of what really stood out was some of the darker stuff, because when you're out and it's daytime and it's bright, you kind of just assume light and kind of take things for granted, and most people don't pay attention to like, are the shadows in the right place from where the sun is and stuff like that. But the real beauty for me in the show kind of came out in a lot of the darker scenes, where that's where I noticed the lighting, and it was like, okay, that is, so an example in season 1, when they're at Sammy's house and the power goes out, and like when the Atrociraptor is breaking through the door, and you can tell like, okay, the light is coming in from the window from outside, kind of thing, from the direction where there's a little bit of stuff, and that, like, that scene in particular was like the first instance of like, damn, this show looks really good. Like it was just really impressive. So you're gonna get a dark theme as I'm going over, these episodes, but were things like that a little more of a challenge? Were they like more fun to work on? Like, because I'm not sure, what's all involved, you know, where you do, but like that scene in particular in season 1, is there anything, you have to offer about it?
Yeah, so it's a kid show, right? We have our target audience, our demographic, and that's always difficult when you're aiming for kid shows because you don't want to go like, well, the tendency is to not go too dark. On the other side, half of that is like a lot of kids are watching this on an iPhone and they might be outside, like while they're doing it. So we have to consider all that too. So you got to really sell it. And contrast is like kind of you want to pull stuff out of the darkness, right? So since we really wanted to also make a visual connection to the original film, and so you'll notice stuff like the film grain and aberration and lens distortion. But for that episode specifically, Dean Cundy was the cinematographer for the original Jurassic Park, and so we were looking at what other stuff did he work on, and Halloween was one of his films he worked on. And me and the art department leaned really heavily on his work in Halloween, like at those night shots. We even used stills from Halloween in the color grade session to kind of match colors. And so that was a lot of the inspiration from that. So that was one of my favorite scenes to direct, the lighting for, just because of how, the noir feeling of it and like the things coming out of the shadows and the spotlighting with like, window frames on the wall, like when Sammy's kind of creeping down the hallway, or when the Atrociraptor bursts through those saloon doors out of the kitchen. And when it comes out, we even like flash the light for a second, like everything gets elevated, so the whole frame lifts to add to that excitement, and that drives like some of the music and the the audio effects, like the stings they put in there. So that was like a lot of the inspiration was like Halloween, and it was really nice because we made that connection to Cundy between the two movies. So, and we were able to again lean into that. I grew up watching like the '90s films, and everything was shot on film, and so to be able to go in to add those little, we wanted to keep it modern, because of it's on streaming and Netflix and everything, but we did want to give it that little taste of the way '90s movies looked and the way film looked. So that was a lot of fun. And what color were our blacks? How deep could we go? And we wanted to go what it's called trap black, and sometimes people say that, which means it's like absolute black. And sometimes we did go into it when it made sense, but keeping the we didn't want it to be so dark where you can't see what's going on. And I know that's a complaint about a lot of modern television and movies, like the Game of Thrones. I know gets a lot of hate for that the last episode they did, or one of the last episodes they did, where you can't see. And to us, that made no sense to not let our audience be able to see what's happening. We want them to know and want them to be scared. But you can use the contrast. You can use the darkness to the light to to build that anxiety. Like when Sammy was against the wall and she had that light on her face and she slides down as the Atrociraptor comes by the door. And even that was like an homage where he sniffs the glass and you can see the breath hit the glass. That was an homage to the kitchen scene when the raptors are breaking in the original Jurassic Park movie.
Well, it makes sense, but I never really thought of, as part of your job, taking into consideration kids are going to watch this on a tablet or a phone, or they might be outside or whatever. That's great that you put that much thought into the way these shows are made. It's things we take for granted just watching it on TV at home. So that's awesome, and you and your team and everybody did such a great job. So next one for season 2. It's not really a scene. It's pretty much the entirety of the first episode. Told
Oh,
you
wow.
I've got a dark theme going on. But just being at night in the storm on that ship, especially when like the lightning cracks, as an example, like the lightning, and you get that brief glimpse of the Majungasaurus because you don't know it's there. There's something there, and the lightning cracks, and you just see the flash of it, and everything with the storm and the fire, and being able to just visually make everything work in such a dark nighttime scene. Like that whole episode, I thought was just incredible. And there are a lot of other moments in the season too, but just over my head, like going over in my head each season. Something that's the first thing that jumped out at me to think about just mentioning to you was that entire episode, mostly because of the storm and stuff like that, I thought looked really cool.
Oh, well, I'm glad you liked it. That episode was on our radar for a long time because we knew it was going to be a really big challenge because it's, one, it's at night, and then two, we're on a big ship with crashing waves, and then it's very effects heavy with, like I said, the waves, the rain, the mist, the fire, like even like things like lens effects where you see the little speckles of rain hitting the lens. And no, it was a big challenge, and the way we approached that was, um, you know, you light rain from the back so you can always see it. Because if it's from the front, this is a weird, probably not exciting for anyone. But if you shoot a light towards rain, you don't really see it from the camera's perspective. But if you put it on the light, you get that nice refraction around the edge of the rain, so it really shows up. And there's a little bit of distortion too. If you pause it when the rain's passing the characters' faces, you can see that it is refracting the light around, like you'll see their faces look distorted. And those little things were really, really fun to add in. So it's not just like, rain effects coming around. It's something a little more something deeper, and integrates it a little better with the scene. But that was a lot of fun. And the director for that episode, Rob Briggs, was coming to me with, the boards and the ideas, like, can we do this and can we do that? So a lot of like, I'd love to take credit for, the timing of like lightning strikes when the Majungasaurus is chasing Darius and it roars up into the screen. All that's well thought out and boarded, and I'm just kind of reacting to what the boards are dictating. The Majungasaurus scene in particular was something we were, there was a good puzzle to figure out. It's like, how can we have this thing sitting behind, like right off camera or right in camera, and not see it, and do the reveal with that lightning strike. And kind of going back to the Sammy episode, is once we had success with the lighting and how we did like the shadows and the darkness and things coming in and out, that really gave us a lot of confidence and gave the team some instruction on what we can achieve with the lighting. So, Majungasaurus is really, really massive, and it was right there behind Darius, and you don't see anything. And then having that lightning strike reveal, and then even like the rain kind of sheeting off of it and giving you that nice like edge light to it. It really was a great moment when we saw it, come out the way we imagined it. We were all so excited. And it was like terrifying. And we're like, is this a kid's show? Like, this is like, and it was exciting because you look at what they did in the original Jurassic Park and like some of those scenes, it's like, that was a kid's movie, kids still love Jurassic Park. Kids still watch that movie, and there's a lot of scary stuff that happens. Or you think about it may have been Fallen Kingdom, when those guys are working on the dock, and you have that lightning flash that reveals the T-Rex kind of coming out of the bushes. That was a big inspiration too. So we did watch the movies constantly, all of them, and kind of dissect them. And then also we took a lot of information from other films. I'm struggling to remember exactly which films we used for the reference for the boat scene, but any movie you have where there's like a ship at sea in a big storm, like we pulled every bit of reference we could and kept comparing it and churning it around and seeing what worked, what didn't work. And it was all about what you can't see and what you can see. That was kind of how we achieved those shots. And it was really exciting to see it come together, because it was not just the technical part that was challenging. It was also like, that was all hands on deck, not to make a boat joke, but it was like everybody coming together, visual effects, lighting, the writing, the animation, like everything had to be so well thought out and so planned for where every piece was to fall into place correctly, so we could achieve those shots. So it was a lot of fun, and I look back really fondly on the episode, because it was, the original artwork, they always make these keyframes way ahead of time, for like, this is what we think we want the episode to look like. And that gives us a lot of really good guidance. The team had printed out a really massive, I think they gave away a poster, I think at Comic-Con of that. But we had a really big one printed out. And it was in our effects supervisor's office. So like I knew it was a target for him as well. So it was always kind of looming over us, so it was a little bit scary that like, how are we going to make this happen? And then we pulled it off, like I think one of the saving graces for that was because it was at night. There's no sets except for the boat. There's nothing in the distance. It's just like darkness and waves. And the rain kind of occludes how far you can see into the distance, and the lights blaring into the lens also kind of helped us out, so you could hide some things, and really allowed us to focus on the story and where it was happening, right? So it's always with like the characters and balancing the tiny characters and the giant dinosaurs, and then the environmental chaos that was happening. So that episode was quite an achievement for the team. We were and kept, gave us a lot of momentum, heading forward. Because that episode, and there was nothing else like it after that, right? We go right into Africa after that, which was a lot of sunshine, and then a lot of underground stuff.
Yeah, and they look great for other reasons and in different ways. But that stood out. I was kind of hoping they would stay on the ship a little longer than one episode when I was first watching. I'm like, oh, because there's only so much story you could tell trapped on a vehicle like that, like similar to the plane, in season 3. But it had potential that you could have, kind of had it, go on a little bit longer if they wanted to. I understand the writing reason. You don't want to keep the character stuck on a boat for 2-3 episodes. You might lose interest. But
I didn't want to be on that boat any longer. That was good with what we did. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it looked amazing. So that stood out to me. Jump to season 3. It's kind of similar, just not as long, not an episode long. One thing I really liked was the build up to the Pyroraptor in season 3, where you get a feather here or there. Obviously fans probably knew what it was based on it being a feather and the color, especially if they've seen Dominion. But the part that jumps out to me, I think it's episode 4, is when the Pyroraptor itself is actually revealed, and it's like coming out of the darkness kind of thing. I thought that was just really cool and really well done. It kind of piggybacks off of the Majungasaurus thing, but instead of just having, like the lightning reveal it out of nowhere, it's just kind of creeping out of the shadow kind of thing. So it's, it could be very blunt seeing something like that. And you see it a lot in, I'm not knocking, any shows or demographics or anything, but into like lower budget, younger kids directed programming, just kind of not be there and then be there sort of thing. And it was that scene of the Pyroraptor reveal was like, it was beautiful, and it was, very film-like. Lack of better way for me to explain it.
You do like the darkness, and I'm sure, I know I appreciate the film-like, compliment, and I'm sure the team will as well, because that was really our goal, is to make it as film-like as possible. Originally that shot had a little bit of rim light on the Pyroraptor as it was in the darkness. Like there was a light down the alley that was just kind of giving it a little bit of shape and silhouette. But to my surprise, they wanted it to come out of absolute darkness, which I thought was like great. And we were trying to figure out like, how do we reveal it slowly so it feels like ominous and terrifying, and hopefully, with all the nods we had already done to kind of, it's, like you said, you kind of anticipated its arrival because of seeing a Dominion and seeing the feathers, and we were kind of leading up to it. There's little like throughout the build up, probably don't notice it, but something we try to pay attention to was like red, the color red. Like, where are we seeing red? Like in association to like Smoothie, like he's asleep in that tomato pile in the beginning, and it's like we try to pump up that red. And anytime there was a reference to the Pyroraptor, we tried to isolate the red a little bit. It's probably too subtle to even notice, but it's something we did think about. Um, but that was a good balance of like the breath coming out. You see the breath first, kind of coming out of the darkness, and then there's eye shine that we use a lot in the show. Like you'll see, like in season two, like you'll see like the lions. You don't see any lions, but you see like their eyes glowing, and that or in episode one of season two, like anytime they're like a flashlight when I think it's a Parasaurolophus in the cage that they shine a light on, and it kind of rears back, and it's got since they're holding a flashlight, you can see the eye shine. Same thing for the Pyroraptor. We wanted to give like, okay, breath, eyes, and then it emerges out of the darkness. So that was a thought process there. It was kind of like what it kind of staging out how it comes out and kind of emerges. But yeah, like that was, I'm glad you liked it. That was also something that was like it's so everything's so detailed, and that's what made it so fun, is being able to pay attention to and build up that suspense visually, and then watching the or seeing the sound effects and the music come in after that, kind of reacting to the lighting too. So no, it was, I'm glad it came together the way it did. Why are you so into darkness? Why do you think
I,
that's
I don't know. It's a lot of these scenes, they just stood out more for, so most of the anime, I have two younger kids, so I
Mhm.
watch a lot of animated stuff, and most of it is geared towards younger children because my daughter just turned 3, so we watch a lot of that stuff. And everything's always just so bright
Mhm.
and
Oh,
happy and everything. And then, so season 3 of Camp Cretaceous is my favorite season, and if you think back, there's a lot that's a lot darker than the other 4 seasons, because of the storm and the Scorpius and everything that's going on. And I think visually, the visuals of that might be part of the reason I like that season the best. I think the overall storytelling and everything about that season is like fantastic. But uh, I think just a way a lot of the stuff looks in the darker scenes for me, I find more impressive in the animated medium. Just when, like said, the reveal was film-like, because I couldn't think of a better way of explaining it. I just find it so impressive when you can make something animated feel real, and a lot of chaos theory in the darker scenes feels real to me. So it's a lot different watching, that scene than watching, like, Gabby's Dollhouse with, my daughter, sort of thing. Not that I'm comparing, those two
right.
shows,
Yeah,
but
they're
it's
a little
just
different. Yeah.
because of like what I'm used to watching. And then seeing a lot of the dark stuff, it's just really impressive what you guys were able to pull off. That it's easy to, but like I said, just be blunt, that it's like not there, then it's there, sort of thing. And just the love and attention that went into a lot of these darker things, really stood out to me. I hope I'm not alone. I hope I'm not the only person that's, noticed this and appreciates, what you all put into this. But um, sticking on the dark theme, it just, popped in my head the last couple days after, New York Comic Con. We got the full trailer for season 4, and as expected, it looks like they're at Biosin Valley while the events of Dominion are going on, and the whole last, third or quarter of that movie, it's dark and things are on fire. And we get a shot in the trailer of it's dark and things are on fire, and the Therizinosaurus is just kind of in the background. It looks like Kenji's carrying Ben out. I don't know if Ben's hurt or what's going on, and I don't want you to tell me what's going on. But like that shot in the trailer kind of stood out, and it's similar reasons for the last 2 things, I mentioned. I think it just, again, it looks like the film, but with the fire and the other stuff going on in the background, and it's dark, and and it's an herbivore, but it's got giant claws, and it just looks menacing, in that shot. And we only see it for a fraction of a second because it's a trailer. They're not going to want to give much away, but I'm assuming we're going to get more really cool while the valley's burning, kind of stuff going on. Um, so, that in the trailer, that stood out to me. And, I don't expect you to say much just because we only saw a second of it, and the season isn't out for a while. But if there's anything you could say, great. If not, I just wanted to say that looked really awesome.
What can I say? Well, we left it all on the field, I would say, for season 4. It was be very careful. I mean, it was very ambitious, similar to the challenges we faced in that boat episode you referenced. There's a lot of, as you saw, there's a lot of effects going on and a lot of things to integrate and to.
It's all right.
I don't know.
We can move on.
If you want to talk about it, November 21st, we can get back together and we can talk about season 4. But I'm really excited for everybody to see it. I love what we did, and it was everybody on the team is very excited for everyone to see it, and I'm glad you like what you saw. I'm glad it made you want to watch. So. And hopefully you feel like it's a fitting ending to, the series.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, it's going to take a lot to let me down. But even, Zach Stentz posted on social media that it's a perfect bookend for Camp Cretaceous. So super interested in seeing, what happens to these characters we've grown to love over the last 5 years. But I'm looking forward to what you guys were able to pull off. Especially with, what's going on at the end of Dominion, with the storm and the fire and everything else like that. So maybe we will try to catch up again after the season, after I have some more thoughts and everything.
Yeah, I'd love that.
So with, all that, I mentioned some of the stuff I really liked. Do you have a favorite episode you worked on? And if it's in season 4, you could just say you haven't seen it yet. Or do you have a favorite episode of the first 3 seasons? That you got to do?
They're all my babies, so I love all of them equally. Season 1 was especially gratifying to make because I know you want a specific episode, but I think I forget if it's episode 7 or episode 6, but it's after Daniel dies. Kenji and Darius have that moment behind the car in the tail lights, and it's just washed in red, and they're having that cry on the road, and that was a really emotional moment. And it was like, man, this is like a kid's show, but look at this is kind of crazy. Originally, like, there wasn't in CG, cars have headlights and tail lights, like you build them like you want them to look like real cars, but we knew that we'd be using tail lights quite a bit in the show. So we wanted to build this rig to cast this big heavy red light out behind the car for those moments. Just because we knew there's a lot of talking, even like when they're arguing and cars are coming by, like when the tension builds up, like red lights are like on their faces, to show like the emotion of the moment. That episode was really moving for me and a lot of fun to see come to fruition. And then also, I'm gonna name a couple. The Sammy episode, of course, the scene when they're in Brooklyn's apartment, when they're looking around and like they're walking through, it's very noir. You have like these big windows with all this moonlight casting in, and the rain is on the windows. And you get that moment where Darius kind of walks by the windows in this wide shot, and he's just silhouetted, against those bright windows. Looked really, really, that was exciting to see, right? Because CG can get kind of flat if you don't, build up your silhouettes. And originally we didn't have that rain on the windows, but we noticed we needed a little something more to pop the silhouette. And adding that little thing. And that was kind of, we looked at, again, like the newer cinematographer that works with Spielberg, Yaminsky, he does a lot of that texture on windows. And like another great is Greg Fraser, the guy who did Batman. I think he might have done Rogue One also. There's always like textures everywhere that, otherwise not exist. It's something very intentional. So that was a lot of fun to see that work And then the flashback episode in season 2 with Brooklyn, where we kind of build up Brooklyn's story and we see, um, how she got to where she was and her backstory, like riding the motorcycle when she's working in the cabin, fixing the toaster oven, and those guys break in the house, all that lighting come in the cabin. That episode was a lot of fun also. And because season 1 was special because it's a road show, like where you're like moving from one section to the next. So we kind of just don't revisit areas. And the Brooklyn episode gave us a chance to go back to Kenji's trailer, go back to the imprisonment camp where Daniel was when you see her talking to him, going back to her apartment again. So it was kind of nice to kind of revisit some of these locations that otherwise, we haven't been reusing at all. Man, another great one was Yasmina's Island. That whole shot with the bridge when they're that standoff on the bridge and they fall underwater, and then the next episode where they're underwater, and you have the I think it was the Beckel Spinax swimming around the van, and all the weird color treatment we got to do in that, and all the effects and the bubbles. It's just hanging in space, right? There's nothing there. There's no water. We're not underwater. We are, but like all that's faked. And getting to, as a compositor, getting to almost build an environment out of nothing, just using, some ambient bubbles that the effects team provided and some atmosphere, made it really feel like you were underwater with the characters. And that scene where like the water rushes up and fills the cabin of Ben's van. Rest in peace, Ben's van. It just felt really like real. It felt incredible. I don't know how we pulled that off, but it was really, really proud of that moment. And then like every episode, man, like even like the episode where Darius and Kenji are fighting over the cell phone under the moonlight, and they go back and they have that heart to heart in the bathtub, just sitting there having like this dialogue with the moonlight kind of casting in. Like it was all, I don't know, it's a good memory. I'm glad I got to be a part of it, not just a part of Jurassic Park franchise, which is like I'm like forever in the Jurassic family now, but being a part of that team and that story is something that's really special to me, and like I'll always like look back fondly. That's something that was just incredible to be a part of. So
I love how much thought and attention it sounds like you guys put into everything. So you guys really did put your all into the show, it sounds like. So really appreciate it. And yeah, as you started talking about different episodes, I thought of things like right as you were saying them, you're segueing in like the bathtub, and then you got to like, oh, and Darius and Kenji, are having their heart to heart. So a lot of those stood out too. I just kind of needed the refresher. Brooklyn's apartment was another one that the first time watching it, I remember like, wow, this looks so cool.
That was a lot of that was when I came on to the show. The art director JP Balmet had put together a shot deck or a lookbook of like what cinematographers and directors we wanted to look really closely at what they had done and incorporate ideas into the show. Like this worked really well, or this worked really well. We think this will help tell our story. So and I know noir was like a really big part of this show. It was pitched as like a 1970s political thriller. The first movie they told me to watch was Parallax View, where they asked me if I had seen Parallax View, and like 3 Days of the Condor and All the President's Men, because that was really like the driving force of what they imagined that first season to look like. And so we put a lot of those little touches in there, like with the there's silly little stuff like split diopters, like something De Palma would do, where you'll have a split lens where you can see in the distance of what's happening over a character's shoulder, but then like there's a close-up that's really tight depth of field on the character's face. You can see that emotion. Lots of like those like lens flares from those 1970s Oh yeah. So like a lot of the influence came, the original ideas came from, the team that put together that look book or shot deck of the movies they wanted to reference. And like I said, a lot of that was the conspiracy political thrillers from like the 70s, and then there was a lot of noir as well. So you'll see a lot of those elements built into it. So it was very fun to go into an animation with that directive and to see what we could achieve. And we did a lot of tests. Like how much grain do we want to represent? Like where does it make sense? Um, what kind of like lens flares? What kind of lenses? We thought it was a lot of fun from a cinematographer standpoint or a compositing supervisor standpoint to have that kind of not control, but like the team was very open to ideas. So it's like, hey, like let's I want to emulate this kind of lens, or I want to emulate this kind of film stock, because it was done on this film. Going back to the Cundy stuff, like what was Cundy shooting on? What kind of was what were his like lens language? Like what was he using in these films to create this kind of moment in his films? How did that make us feel? How do we use that to inform the audience of how we want them to feel also, and kind of put them in that moment? For us, it's a little different because we have that touchstone of those other films that it reminds us of. So you have that built-in kind of idea of that emotion or what it made you feel when you saw it. This audience probably doesn't, probably didn't see the parallax view. They probably, like these kids probably don't know about that stuff, but there's got to be some kid out there that saw it and was just like, what's this? And is curious, or like maybe when he or she or they one day down the line come across those films somehow, they're in film school or somebody shows it to them, they'll be like, wait a minute, like I remember that from Chaos Theory. I remember seeing that, like, oh my gosh. And they'll go back and maybe rewatch and get see some of the details we put in, some of the thought we put into that. That's the hope. Like it was a lot of fun. We thought it was really charming, but a lot of charm is based on like your own nostalgia. So yeah, hopefully the visual language came across and did the job it was supposed to do. And it seems like a lot of it resonated with you because of how much you were enjoying the darkness and seeing the purpose of it. It's not just dark to be dark. It's dark to set a mood and to tell a story, use it for reveals and jump scares. Like there was a lot of thought behind it. We were never hiding anything in darkness. It was always used thoughtfully. Yeah, just like I think that was the most rewarding part, is being able to be so thoughtful about how we used lighting and the lack of lighting in certain scenarios.
Yeah, I because I'm sure you're probably never going to hear it from the target demographic of the show, because kids don't notice or pay attention to that. Well, most kids, I'm sure some probably do, but I know there are other adults that watch the show that also have noticed a lot of that stuff, particularly with this show, that it stands out. Brooklyn's apartment is an example that I clearly remember people talking about on social media after watching that season, about just the way it looked and everything. So we notice, and we really appreciate everything that got put into it. So everybody involved, y'all did such a great job, from not just from the stuff you work on, but everything else you mentioned, the lighting, or the animation and the writing and the sound. uh I love the score. I was a little disappointed that only season 1 has the score available on streaming. It would be nice if all the other seasons do, and I don't know if there are plans to do it eventually. But I said the same thing about the score in Camp Cretaceous. Like, going back, I mentioned season 3 being my favorite. That was really the only season in that show where the music really stood out to me, because it seemed to fit very well, and it seemed very Jurassic Park-ish,
Mm.
compared to the other ones. And I don't know if it's just because of everything else I kind of felt with that season, but the music kind of stood out in that one, similar to how you said it all kind of goes together with what you guys did with the music and the sound effects. And I agree that it all works so nicely together. Everything about this show, um, just blends perfectly in my opinion. So I kind of explain it to people when they're like, "Oh, it's a kid's show." I'm like, "But is it a kid's show?" Like, I get who they're going for, but you can, and um, my thought and opinion could be totally wrong, that it seemed like everyone involved in the show realized, like, adults are going to watch this show either with their kids or their Jurassic fans are going to watch, and you kind of went, a little above and beyond to make it more adult friendly, for lack of a better way of kind of expressing what it is. My best example is, if you've watched the Star Wars Clone Wars animated show, the later seasons of that show, you can kind of tell they shifted directions. They're like, adults are really into this. So
Mm,
it got not really adult themed, but more geared towards adults are going to appreciate this just as much, if not more, than the kids that the show was originally meant for, kind of things. There's a lot of darker scenes and a lot of, like, death for a kids show, and stuff like that. So I kind of compare the later seasons of the Clone Wars with Chaos Theory, as far as, like, it's marketed as a kid show, but I don't really classify it as a kid show. You still get moments where it's like, yeah, okay, it's a kid show, but it's also stuff you can pull off in animation that you can't really pull off in live action. But
yeah.
I don't know. I'm just convincing myself as an adult that absolutely loves this show. But it does seem like you had everybody in mind making the show, not just we need to make a kids Jurassic show.
Well, we never wanted to, like, I guess maybe punch down isn't the right word, but we never wanted to pull our punches to make something more kid friendly. We had a story that we wanted to tell, and we looked at the visuals of Jurassic Park and all of our other favorite movies that we wanted to take from. And we also wanted to make something really high quality. Like, when kids always want to watch something that's not in their demo, right? They want to watch maybe like smaller kids. They're like in love with like Coco Melon and Gabby Sawhouse. But when I was a kid, I wanted to watch like heavy metal and Wizard, like all like the Ralph Bashki stuff, and like I wanted to watch all the horror movies like that I wasn't supposed to watch when I was a kid. And not that we were trying to like traumatize anyone, and we certainly weren't. We just wanted to make a really high quality television show that kids could watch. And because like we had really good high quality shows and movies when we were kids, not that there's a lack of those out there. Like Clone Wars is a great example of something that's really good, like Primal, and then that's not really a kids show. But even like the newer animation that's coming out, like Scavenger's Reign, and Uncommon Side Effects, like that, those kind of shows that are really, or even Rick and Morty. I'm sure kids are watching Rick and Morty and they shouldn't be, but well, not because it's not good. I love that show, but that's not their target audience, right? But we did have a target audience, but we certainly didn't want to not tell the story that we wanted to tell, and we had a lot of support from the leadership to do that, and a lot of encouragement from them as well. So I'm glad that it has that characteristic to it, where it doesn't feel like we were making something kid friendly, even though it was kid friendly in the end. But I don't think we had to rein it in very often where it was like too much. I think we struck a really good balance. And as a parent, you probably know there's like, or even as a human being, you saw shows when you were a kid and you go back and watch them as an adult and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that's what they were saying there. Or there's nothing. I don't think there's anything really hidden. I'll say there's nothing hidden in our show, but there's certainly stuff that's for the adult watchers as well. So I'm really glad that it has that that ability to be entertaining for adults with a more complicated palette or complex palette versus kids who just want to see dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's kind of how all this started with my son. He just wanted to see dinosaurs.
Yeah,
So, and then
same.
I got hooked into the story, with Camp Cretaceous, and then I would end up watching it without him. And
It's
I'll,
really it's really good stories. Like, they are legitimately like good well written characters, exciting stories. Like you talked to Bethany, like Scott and Bethany, put together something really, really, and the writing team put together really great characters and stories. And uh, Aaron Hammersley, the other executive producer, he also, like, with his direction and guidance, and Jason Kang, like those guys, like brought it, man. It's like action packed, emotional, have these long, moments of dialogue where you get really invested in the characters, and you have this great development. And that's something people complain about the films, like the more recent films, is like they're really, well, like, I'm not complaining about the films, but in a film you just don't have the same amount of time to get to know the characters. We were so lucky, and we had all of Camp Cretaceous and all of these episodes in Chaos Theory to build up these characters and their backstories. So it's not a fair adjustment to say it's a complaint about the films. I think it's just in general that we have the advantage of being able to craft and build up these worlds, unlike that film just doesn't have that opportunity to do.
Yeah, it's tough when you're boxed into 2 to 2.5 hours where you have, you know, 8, 10, 12 episodes of a 22-minute show. And like you said, multiple seasons. Like I think Yaz is a great example of where you see her from season 1 in Camp Cretaceous to where you see her now. Everything she went through, just her personality change, and then the PTSD and all the stuff. She's probably got my favorite character arc, overall across both shows. Um, but yeah, I know I've said it a few times, but I'll say it one last time. I really appreciate everything everybody in the show has done and the love you put into it. Um, I don't want to take up any more of your time, especially if you got storms and other stuff, going on there. But thank you so much again for the amazing work, you and your team and everybody else you've worked with have done. And I'm really, really looking forward to season 4 in a little over a month. And, said, I'll take you up on that offer. Maybe we could talk again after I have, more to digest and some more dark scenes that stand out to me. So
Yeah, oh, I would love that. And thank you so much for reaching out and putting this together. And I love talking about the show and what we did, and supporting, raising the people who worked on its profile a little bit. And appreciate you being a fan and putting this together to, maybe bring some other people into the fold, or offer some information that people might not other have had.
Okay, guys, thank you so much again to Eric. That I had such a great time doing that interview. One thing I forgot to say before the interview was that you may have noticed a little bit of a technical difficulty in there. He was in the middle of saying something, then it sounded like he just kind of cut off mid word or mid sentence, and then there was a slight pause, and then he started talking again about something. Uh, while the time we were doing the interview, some storms were rolling through where he lived, and his power went out for a brief period of time, and we got disconnected, but we regrouped and we got back together and we got the ball rolling again and continued on with the interview. So sorry for the little technical difficulty there in the middle of it, and thank you to Eric for letting me know what was going on and jumping back in. And, like I said, he's a fantastic guy. I had such a great time talking to him. And if anyone else out there is listening or watching this episode and you're one of the creators of Chaos Theory, please hit me up on social media, or email on my on the Campcast Twitter account. I think my email address is on there for you to get in contact with me. I would love to chat with you too. I want to chat with everybody involved in making these shows. You all did such a great job, and I can't say enough about how great these shows have ended up being. And I know season 4 is not going to disappoint from everything I'm hearing. It's a very fitting conclusion, and one person very, very close to the show told me my mind is going to be blown. So we'll see if it lives up to that. But I don't know. That wraps up this episode. I wanted to get this interview out there as soon as I could once we got it scheduled and on the books. I was very excited for it. Uh, been kind of riding the high of the interview all day. It was just such a cool experience, a cool interview. Such a great guy, like I said, and I can't thank him enough for taking time out of his schedule to chat with me about this awesome show. Maybe coming soon, chat with you guys about the season 4 trailer. We can talk a little bit about it. Probably nothing you haven't already heard from other people, but that's okay. A different perspective is always a good thing. And I know I keep mentioning it in the interviews. I got this other idea for videos coming up, but now I think I may wait until after season 4 drops because we're already getting closer and closer to season 4. That way, it could fill up some content when we have this big, potentially infinite lull with no more content coming, no more episodes or seasons of any of these shows. I still have plenty to talk about, so don't worry. The podcast isn't going to be going anywhere. Trying to line up some more interviews, chatting with some community members, other content creators, and whatnot. So lots of stuff that I'm working on. I hope to keep you guys updated and posting new content as frequently as possible, even though sometimes, I know a couple weeks can go by, and I do apologize for that. But thank you for those sticking with me through everything. You can find the podcast at JP_Campcast on Twitter and at Cretaceous Campcast on other social media. Instagram, we use the most out of other social media. I'm going to do my best to be active on all social media, but there's so much to keep up with, and I'm so busy with other stuff so many times, I kind of lose track and forget other social media exists. So I apologize for those of you over on Blue Sky and Threads and anywhere else that I may be forgetting. And of course, I'm at Cretaceous_Dave if you're interested in me. And yeah, that about wraps it up. Thank you everyone so much for watching or listening, and everyone stay safe, stay Jurassic, and have a great one. So long.